Good morning to Forward Fridays. Today, we are going to be having a conversation with a leader at Kaufman Rossin, Blain Heckaman. Blain is joining us in our 21-day challenge in this reflection on week 2, which really focused on education. For those who don't know, for the last 2 weeks, we have been journeying as a community through a learning experience in a 21-day challenge. We are halfway through. The first week, we focused on voting and voting rights and the history of voting. And week 2, we really focused on education. Next week, we're focusing on criminal justice. And the last week, we're gonna be focusing on public health. Kaufman Rossin was the first agency, the first company to step forward and say, we want to support the 21-day challenge. They did that before there was anything but a conversation to be had, because we were in the middle of a meaningful conversation. And they said, how do we support this? We want to be a part of this. What do you need? Blain, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you for that leadership at Kaufman that raised their hand and said, and for leading Kaufman in that conversation. Tell me how that came to be and why that was so important for Kaufman Rossin to say we're in.
Well, you know, we had a lot of people that were concerned and upset and about everything that was going on. We communicated to our people and committed to really trying to figure out how we could get involved and learn. We were moved by the diversity of the outcry, and we said, you know, we were going to be looking for opportunities to put our resources and our people behind this anti-racism and social injustice movement. And within about a 24-hour period, Janet Altman, our marketing director, introduced us to the 21-day challenge after talking to you, and we were like, to everybody that was involved in that decision was, wow, this is perfect for what we need to do, because it starts with education.
Definitely. And thank you again for stepping forward and doing that and leading the way. So tell me what that educational journey has been like at Kaufman. How has the 21-day challenge experience been?
Well, we started with, before the challenge started, we created a KR Talk, which was a group of people that were interested in coming together in a Zoom environment. I think we had close to 100 people the first day, and talking about experiences and giving everybody a safe place to have a conversation, right? That was the concept. And we announced at one of those KR Talks that we were going to be participating in the 21-day challenge. Everybody understood the power of learning more about it, and got really excited about it. So, you know, I think we have probably about 115 of our employees participating in the 21-day challenge, which is a significant number. And it's really, you know, to a person, it's been eye-opening. There are a lot of things that, you know, from a bias perspective, unconscious bias perspective, that you just accepted or didn't see, or didn't remember, or history wasn't taught to us in maybe the most accurate way. But it really was enlightening it has been an enlightening journey to date, as to the challenges and the institutional racism that exists, that when you walk through the world as a white person, you don't necessarily see.
And that makes my heart sing. Thank you for that. That makes my heart sing, because that's what we hope to impart by this challenge. Is we wanted a safe space where everyone could meet with common knowledge and start to go, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that. I didn't think about that, or I don't have to think about that, right? and everyone's experience and learning journey is so different. And that's why education is incredibly important. And this week we've been focusing a lot on the history and the issues in the educational system, unconscious bias and how that shows up in the educational system, teaching about differences and similarities in that system, how Black children, school to prison pipeline, how Black girls have been seen have been adultized, and that there's been an erasing of kind of their youth to some extent. What is it about education that resonates for you, and from what you've been learning this week also? But why is it that, what is it about education that really resonated for you in this?
Well, being in the professional service business and in a very technical, in consulting in a very technical field, it's really important that our people, and I think for everybody in general, have a mindset of lifelong learning. And that's what life is all about, continuing to evolve. And so it's been a theme for our organization to continue to learn, and learning is never over. And there's so many obvious experiences that we're having today and throughout our lives that you must continue to learn and educate yourself. And so we also have a firm belief, and as do I, that education is the solution for so many things. And I really believe that education is the start of understanding the social injustice and the anti-racism that exists today. I think, as an example, one of the most powerful things that I think our group, and they've commented on, has learned is that we all pride ourselves historically as being non-racist, but today, obvious that that's not enough. And that kind of goes along with, well, I'm not a racist, but I'm also not speaking out, and I'm not acting out in a way that makes things better, because they need to change.
Right. Being an anti-racist, right? That active action.
This move to anti-racism is a hot topic in our conversation, in our meetings, and and I think that's all coming about because of education.
So tell me, based on that,
there's so many examples. Not long ago, my boys were in of high school age. They've now both graduated from college, but went to private school. But played in athletics, and in the course of that, developed friendships with African Americans, and there were African Americans in their school. But when we would travel to other schools in South Florida, you would end up in inner city schools that were predominantly Black, and you would just, and the initial thought was, well, it's that way because that's where the schools are located, that's where these people live, and never really giving thought to these schools are really segregated. I didn't grow up in a busing environment. Many of my peers that lived in urban environments did. But today, we've kind of shifted back to for the public school system being segregated, and not understanding that through gerrymandering, there are ways you could change that today just by drawing the lines differently. Not only having diversity within the schools, but also creating more taxable wealth that
more resources at school, absolutely,
that flow to those schools to put things more on an even footing. And there's also the curriculum that I understand is different. So that's an example of something that you experience in your life. You walk through it and you just assume that's the way it has to be. And the reality is it's not the way it has to be.
Absolutely.
And it kind of rolls into the whole voting, the first week of education about voting
Mm-hmm.
and how important it is to get involved. I mean, we've all gone to the polls, and at the bottom of our election ballot is the school board. We don't know who they are. We haven't done any research, and we just check a box because we have to vote for somebody. And we don't realize the power of our state and local positions, including school boards, that
Mm-hmm.
can make a difference. And I think in our KR Talk meetings, that is something that came out loud and clear, that people understand they need to make sure they vote. They need to make sure they're informed voting, all the way down to the local and state positions, and understand
Absolutely.
are really uh, what their positions are on things, because that's where it needs to start.
Absolutely. That was very eye-opening for me also. And talking about how we show up prepared, because last week in voting, there was that whole conversation around the literacy test that folks were forced to take in order to be able to prove that they could vote. And there was a lot of conversation on our Facebook page and in our different groups last week about how the language at the poll, the language when the day you go to vote on that sheet, is not very different from like the confusion that is created from historic literacy tests, because you go and you read, but you really don't know what that amendment might really represent in real life, because those words are construed in a way to make you think you're voting for one thing, but maybe you're not, right? Even with the school board members and the state attorneys, the power that they have, not being prepared when we show up is as important today as it was 60 years ago. We have to do our homework before we show up. And that's a part of the educational access when we talk about who we put in power to make educational decisions. Everything from statutes to curriculum, all of that comes into play. So thank you for bringing that up. And, you know, what we hope is that we're creating these really aggravating conversations, and it sounds like we are at Kaufman Rossin. And I think I want people to understand, tell people what Kaufman Rossin does for those who don't know. What is Kaufman Rossin?
Well, we are a CPA and advisory firm providing a myriad of services related to tax and financial reporting, consulting, wealth management. We've been in the South Florida community for 58 years. Our footprint is the Tri-County area, Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade. And so we are, South Florida is our home. It is where where our clients come from. We primarily serve entrepreneurial focused businesses. And our goal is to help our clients be successful and move the dial, and we continue to look at our platform and make sure that we have services that our clients need, and it's about helping people. And it's a rewarding profession, and we have a diverse employee base that looks like the community. I would probably say, with the exception of the African American community, which we're probably somewhere around 5%. It's not where we want to be, and we're going to be focused on that.
So I love that. And the reason why I think it's really important to speak about who Kaufman Rossin is because in every industry, someone would say, what would a CPA firm really need? Why would they need to dive into, why would you need to dive into racial and social justice issues and understanding and going through an education process? And I think every firm, exactly what you just said, South Florida is your home. You have to think about your employee base. You think about the representation that you have around the table and the people you represent as well in South Florida, the small business owners. We know that African Americans and especially women of color are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in the state. But what we also know is that they're not scaling their businesses very well. So there's that access to good help, access to good support, access to good funding and capital. There are other issues of just knowledge and access to a network that could help them to create and scale, take on employees, grow their businesses. And all of that is painted by the brush of racial justice and social justice and access. So it is important in every field, right? And I guess I want to know, I hear you say Kaufman Rossin is taking a deeper look at their representation on their employee base. Is there anything else in terms of actions within or outside of Kaufman that you're starting to think about? Maybe you don't have formulated yet and you're walking through this challenge to kind of go, we really need to be thinking about this, or we really need to be thinking about that, or how can we get more active in this? How is that working out for you guys, or what do you think your next steps are?
We've always, looked at that data and said we need to do better. And we would go to our traditional recruiting areas and if we met an African American that met our criteria, we would by all means be interested. But we realize more today than ever that we need to be more intentional about it. And the AICPA, which is the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, has as our industry leader, they have a program where they are going to inner city schools, high school students, and talking to African American students about the opportunities, the career opportunities that accounting, CPAs, consulting provides, because you need to start early when they are already in college. One of the issues is African Americans, there's not enough of them going into the field, right? They don't see it as an exciting career or whatever. They don't understand the opportunities, the economic and other social benefits of it. So there's an education process, and it's starting at the high school.
It's exposure.
It's exposure. So we at Kaufman Rossin have decided we're going to be more intentional, and we're going to, in addition, going to the usual universities we go to, we're going to pick a couple of historically Black colleges and go there with a purpose of an intent of finding the candidates that we need to and create opportunities for African Americans, people of color. And as well, we're going to be talking to the National Association of Black Accountants, which is an organization, again, that's designed to try to help advance people of color,
Representation,
and how we can participate, and maybe meet some additional candidates along the way.
Right.
And key to all of it is mentoring and making sure that these employees have the proper mentoring and really have the opportunities to advance.
I love that you mentioned mentoring, and I want to emphasize that you're talking about really changing the access and network, and also the understanding of the field, right? And being plugged in earlier and understanding that the field is an option, because there is a big part of that is about what you're exposed to. And the more exposure that happens intentionally in various fields. We've been talking about the STEM field and the underrepresentation of women and people of color in STEM fields for decades. And that needle is just slightly beginning to move. But so Kaufman, what I'm hearing you say is very similar to that, in that, you want to get more involved in the exposure. You want to get more involved in understanding how you create more representation in the field, and how you get earlier into the conversation when kids are younger, communities, colleges, schools. And I love that there's an association that could really help you to maneuver through that process. So that's really great. And we'd love to be able to help Kaufman. As we mentioned early on, and for those who don't know, A big part of this for YWCA is that not only through our mission to eliminate racism and empower women, we expect that we are your accountability partner. So through this process, we don't just want to offer the 21-day challenge. We want to walk through it with you. We want to process this with you. We want to talk to you about how your organization is approaching it, how this period of learning has created aha moments for you to realize the power and strength within your organization to change certain things. And there is that power and strength in your organization to focus on specific issues. We also recognize that focusing on the data and outcomes is important because that's where you see where disparities show up. And you have to be really diligent about saying, okay, what's our data telling us about who we're serving, who we're hiring, who's successful after a year, how do their annual reviews, is there a disparity in their annual reviews? Why would that be? And when you drill into those data points, then you can back into what could have caused that in the process pipeline. So what in the process pipeline, you start to ask yourself those tough questions. What in the process pipeline of recruiting, of hiring, of training, of developing, and makes it that X amount of people become managers? And so you might be looking at your manager data points, but your questions go back to your process. How is it that it gets to that point? Similarly with those that you serve, who are our clients. And then when you look at that data point, you can say, and why is it? What is it in our process? The people we advertise to, the programs that we have, the ability to afford, the affordability or the access to Kaufman Rossin and our fleet of experts that creates this outcome, and then being able to affect that for that outcome. So I hope, and I will continue to stand with you and challenge Kaufman Rossin, as I hope Kaufman Rossin challenges us as a YWCA in this mission, because that's a mutual accountability, that we show up for each other and continue to challenge each other in that conversation. Is there anything that you would love for folks to know about that or about this challenge? Any last words you'd like to leave?
Well, it's again, it is all about education, and this 21-day challenge is educating anyone who participates to the issues and the things that need to be done to make to reduce social injustice and racism. I thought, interesting today, and that education starts as early as possible. Today there in the challenge there was a video of a preschool in California where they were, talking with the young children about skin color and really getting them to understand that whole issue and the biases that some already have even at that young age, and kind of overcoming that. I think it was very powerful, and I don't think you can start early enough in the education process to really get people to address it.
Yeah. You know what I loved about that video? It was the acceptance and understanding of differences and similarities, because they also said, if you add this shade, the color gets lighter, because they were mixing. If you add this shade, the color gets darker. And so they were talking about the differences, but they also went to, and we all have lungs, and we all have a heart, and we all have this bones, and we all have these similarities. But instead of saying, I don't see race and color, it was very factual, and it allowed them to process that there are differences, and that's okay. What does that mean? We are so similar in so many other ways, but a lot of folks like to say, we don't see color. I don't see color, and don't understand just how offensive to some extent it is to people of color, because you're saying you don't see me, and you don't understand that there are things that I live with that are different. And so I thought that's how that same video also resonated for me.
Yes. I would also encourage anyone to take the the tests. There was several of them about unconscious bias, and if anybody thinks that they don't have bias in them, I encourage them to take one of these tests, because they do. And it's important to understand what your biases are, so that you can overcome them and be intentional and be understanding that you have them. If
Mm-hmm.
you're suppressing them, because we all grew up in a time when we weren't treating people of color in the proper way, and even today. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that, Blaine. And thanks for being open and vulnerable and having this conversation. I think in leadership, it's really important for us to do that. And you're opening the pathway for that conversation in your company, in your organization, is it's something that will be remembered. People remember,
Well,
you make them,
it's uncomfortable, and it's supposed to be.
it's
And
supposed to be uncomfortable. Thank you. Thanks for being uncomfortable with me. I
my pleasure.
And I look forward to more conversations with you and more conversations with Kaufman Rossin. And thank you for elevating the value of this to corporations, to businesses, to small businesses, to large businesses, to institutions. This is important for us all. It is incredibly important for us all. And Kaufman is an example of that. And we look forward to being your partner for a long time. For everyone, Forward Fridays are every Friday. Next week, we're going to be talking about criminal justice. Join us on our website, YWCA South Florida, or any social media handle at YWCA South FL. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And if you join the challenge, which you still can because you are able to catch up, if you join the challenge, you will be invited to our private Facebook page. That's a wonderful, inspirational, supportive learning community that's going on there. And I hope that you join. Blaine, thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. You have a great day and a great weekend, okay?
Will do. You as well.
I'll be talking to you soon.
Bye-bye.